got Fallout 4 last week. I'd been trying to get hold of a copy since it was released. In the end, I managed to get hold of it on Steam. I wasn't happy about getting a PC copy of this game, mainly because my laptop doesn't even cut close to a gaming laptop, with standard specs for a power user more than a gamer. My rig only made about half the minimum specs, and as such, in the open world suffered from serious crashing issues. After a couple of days, I had enough. Couldn't deal with it anymore, and I went looking for mods to reduce the game's requirements. I found a couple of mods that reduced the requirements a little, so I could finally play at a somewhat decent frame rate. It's not perfect, but it's tolerable. So following this, I started out my adventure. I've been playing for a few days now, and I was level 35. I'd finally acquired a set of XO1 power armor and amassed about 50 fusion cores. So I decided it was time for some Commonwealth exploration. I started by heading east on the map to go to this high level place I heard about from all the forums, Dunwich Borers. I'd heard the place was kind of spooky too, but decided to avoid any spoilers. After all, I spend most of my nights listening to creepypastas. It can't possibly be that bad. So after some time, I arrived, and I checked my surroundings. At first glance, the place looked like an ordinary quarry. Well, that was before I noticed a cross-shaped cage with human remains in it. Now, this would be fine, but the pyre below it was still smoking, showing signs that it was recently extinguished. Looking past this, I decided to look for the entrance. I eventually came across a large opening, and upon walking into it, I noticed the walls weren't anything ordinary. They certainly weren't made of stone. Honestly, if I could guess, I would actually say it was marble. Though looking past the unique architecture, I started to head down the marble tunnel to the inside entrance. It was just a simple rusted metal door. Certainly wasn't anything special considering the aforementioned architecture, so like any gamer would, I drew my gun and opened the door. As I entered, I noticed straight away that like with the pyre outside, this place was active, but not necessarily bustling with life. There was certainly power down here, which I noticed from the active floodlight upon entrance. I continued to explore this place until I got to a small foggy four-way intersection. It was at this point stuff seemed to get weird. I started hearing noises like footsteps behind me and randomly occurring tremors, which shook the entire mine. Now later on I learned a couple of things about the place. It turned out the tremors and the footsteps are normal and are part of the ambient effects of this place, so points to Bethesda for creepiness. One of the other occurrences was flashback style hallucination scenes for the residents before their untimely deaths. In a way, this place all seemed like somewhere these people would literally live. Later on, I encountered an interesting flashback. A group of children on their knees in a semicircle around a man who appeared to be a preacher. If I guessed, this was probably an occult related incident that took place here. After all, what were they even mining for? I carried on and came across a little pedestal that had a weapon on it. A ceremonial looking serrated machete. If I had to guess, it was something to do with that flashback. As I approached the end of the place, I saw a small pool. I walked into it, and to my surprise, it was a lot deeper than I thought. I decided to swim towards the bottom, and that was when I saw it. Easily the creepiest thing in Dunwich Borers. The visage I was greeted with was a giant metal head with only one eye and a nose visible, which in itself was creepy enough, but after staring at it for a few minutes, something happened. It opened its eye. It wasn't even a normal eye, it was red, almost glowing. Honestly, I crapped myself at first, but I just brushed it off as one of Bethesda's clever tricks and left the Borers and saved the game. Okay, so following that, I decided to look on the internet to see if I missed anything important inside Dunwich Borers, and at this point, I'm just a little worried. It turns out there are supposed to be enemies inside. I only found corpses, and to top it all off, that head in the well, it turns out it doesn't open its eye, ever. So I started searching across the forums. I got many reactions. Some were of people telling me I was a troll, others telling me I was just seeking attention. I decided to load up the game again and forget all of this crap I was getting from the people in the forums and the metal man in Dunwich Borers. So as I carried on my adventure in the Commonwealth, I started to notice some things. One of which, I was seeing flashbacks like the ones inside the Borers. I just brushed it off as triggered events from the inside of the Borers. But as I continued, the flashbacks were getting worse. Some of them were from a group of raiders running from the Borers, and others were the deaths of the people inside. They were literally being driven insane. I'd been playing well over an hour, and it was about 2:45 AM. And then I started to feel tremors in the Commonwealth. At this point, I was starting to freak out. So once again, I saved and headed to my friendly neighbourhood forum, hoping that they might have some answers for me. But as before, they ridiculed me and called me a troll. At this point, I really was unsure where to turn. I decided to leave it for tonight and have my friend come over the next day. After all, he's pretty much the biggest Fallout fan I know. And that wasn't an underestimation. He literally knew the lore back to front. So my friend Alex turned up the next day. It was Saturday. We spent most of the day relaxing and catching up. He was here for the weekend anyway, so I figured the game could wait till later. I was more of a night owl anyway. Midnight came around, and I started to relate to him the events that had been happening to me in Fallout 4. He seemed skeptical at first, but regardless was eager to investigate. I loaded up the game and began playing. Within the first 5 minutes, he bore witness to the tremors I'd previously mentioned, and we decided it would be wise to reinvestigate Dunwich Borers so that he could see what was going on for himself. When we arrived, the ground was darker than before, looking almost scorched. We just passed it off as being a side effect of it being night while in low detail and pressed on. We re-adventured through the Borers and found ourselves at the well again. My stomach filled with dread at the thought of seeing that glowing red eye, especially after all the community denial I'd faced, which began leading to me to believe that something seriously messed up was going on here. We jumped into the well and again headed for the bottom. When we got there, it was gone, as if it was never actually supposed to be there. But it's odd because I know it's supposed to be there. It's been mentioned in all the forums. As we went to leave, a new quest pop-up appeared. It was called Marching on the Commonwealth. Now, I know this game has its share of secrets, but this quest isn't even in the walkthroughs, including the ones transcripted from the official game guide books. We left the place again, but this time when we got out, my health started decreasing. I didn't notice it at first. It was only like 1 health point every 20 seconds or so. Nonetheless, a quest marker had appeared, relating to the quest we had received, and yes, I did check the quest. It had no description or hints, just one word: follow. So as two rational guys, we did what we followed where it would lead. After all, we were still quite skeptical it wasn't just a Bethesda update that hadn't been announced. We arrived at the marker's location. It was in the glowing sea, and I'd already burned through about 10 stim packs because of my decaying health problem. The odd thing is that there was nothing there, completely barren, and come to think of it, we hadn't encountered a single opponent travelling this far. That didn't change on location, but the quest updated. It said return to the Commonwealth. So I tried to fast travel to a near location to the marker, to no avail. My fast travel was disabled. It just came up with the message you normally get when enemies are nearby. So once again, we walked, and a fog started to pick up. As we progressed, we were about halfway through, and we were essentially blind to our surroundings, and our health still depleting. It was at this point we noticed a shadow. It was in the distance, possibly of an MP of some form. We ran towards it, and the odd thing is, as we got closer it became more defined. It was a Mr. Handy. Codsworth, to be precise. He started a dialogue saying that disaster had hit the Commonwealth. This conversation tree seemed typical of a normal dialogue for a quest, until Codsworth said something odd. It's hopeless, Alex. It's just too strong. Now, that would be normal if it weren't for the fact that my character's name was Silver. At this point, me and Alex both were spooked. It's not too strange because I knew Codsworth had that name in his voice catalogue. It's weird because that was both of our names, and it wasn't my character's name at all. Nonetheless, we pressed on and eventually found ourselves outside of the glowing sea. It was there, I saw it. I saw the shadow of 2 giant legs, easily larger than Liberty Prime's, and as I looked up to the top of the figure, I saw its 2 glowing red orbs attached to this huge shadow. The last thing I saw was a laser beam like that of Liberty Prime's weapons, and then my computer crashed. It got one of those DPC watch dog violation blue screens, and then when we tried to load up the Fallout 4 save after, the character file was corrupted. Everything I'd worked for was gone. I later looked on a forum, and someone sympathised with me, said that they'd experienced something similar, and they said it was a bit of apparent unfinished and cut content from the main game, which I was fine with believing, but something to this day still doesn't sit right with me. What triggered this cut content in the first place? And why did it call me Alex? I thought I should write all this down just in case someone else experienced this. Now I think about it, I didn't really think to check what that low graphics mod actually does.